The Free Thinker Show. Ignite your mind, challenge the norm.
Hey there, welcome back for a deep dive. We're tackling a topic today that's, well, it's guaranteed to make your brain spin a little bit, I think. We're diving into the world of everything we don't know, and we're doing it with this awesome YouTube video essay you sent over. It's called Here is Everything We Don't Know, extended from the channel Aperture. And let me tell you, it is packed with fascinating questions about the universe and our place in it, of course. You ready to jump in? So the video starts with something I bet a lot of you will remember, the dress. Remember back in, what was it, 2015, when the internet completely lost its mind over that picture of a dress? Nobody could agree if it was blue and black or white and gold. It was crazy. But, it actually turned out to be a really powerful example of how different our perceptions of reality can be. Because even with something as you'd think straightforward as color, two people can look at the exact same thing and see something totally different. Makes you wonder, right? What else are we misinterpreting out there? What other truths are really just like products of our limited senses? It's a bit of a rabbit hole, this video. So from there, the video goes on to talk about the mysteries of the ocean. And that's something that's right here on our planet. But we've explored so little of it. Like, did you know that we've only really explored something like 5 to 10% of the ocean depths? That means that like 90% of this, this whole underwater world is the total mystery. Who knows what kind of creatures are down there, what ecosystems, geological wonders. It's kind of exciting, right? And then on top of that, there's this thing called the coastline paradox. You'd think that measuring a coastline would be pretty simple, right? Just get your ruler out, whatever. Right. But it gets really complex because the closer you look, the more details you have to consider. Like every little cove, every outcropping, even every grain of sand, it all adds to the total length. And you can actually end up with a coastline that stretches towards infinity, depending on how closely you're measuring. It's wild. And what's so interesting about this whole coastline paradox thing is that it shows how even concepts that we think are straightforward, they can actually be incredibly complex. And it shows how limited our measurements and definitions of the world can be. It's all about our perspective, isn't it? And how we approach these big questions. Which leads us to, well, another big question. This one's about human achievement. Did we invent fire? Or did we just, discover it? Was it always there, just waiting for us to figure it out? What about music? Something, right? Did we create music? Or was it already woven into the fabric of the universe? I mean, these might seem like kind of abstract questions, but they really get at the heart of what it means to be human. Like, are we just really, really smart apes who learn how to use tools and make fire? Or are we something more? Are we beings that are capable of, like, tapping into something bigger than ourselves, something timeless and profound? And if we are, then where does that put us in the grand scheme of things? It's a question, that humans will probably be wrestling with forever.
Okay, speaking of humans and what makes us special, for a long time we believed that one of the things that set us apart from animals was our ability to use tools.
But then came Jane Goodall, and her research with chimps just blew that whole idea out of the water. She was observing these chimps in Gombe Stream National Park, and she saw them doing some pretty incredible things. Like they were using twigs to fish for termites, they would strip leaves off of branches to make tools, and they even used stones to crack open nuts. It totally changed how we thought about the differences between us and other primates. But her discoveries didn't end there. See, Goodall's observations also showed just how deeply emotional and intelligent chimps really are. They form these strong family groups. They grieve when they lose a loved one. They even have these complex power struggles within their groups, and they show empathy. So it's not just about intelligence or using tools, right? There's something more going on there. So if it's not just those things, what does set us apart from other animals? What makes us uniquely human? Is it language? Our self-awareness? Or maybe we're just more like our primate cousins than we'd like to admit. It's a really interesting question. And it challenges us to reconsider our place in the world. It's not a simple answer anymore. We can't just say, well, we use tools and they don't, and call it a day. There's this whole spectrum of intelligence and awareness out there, and humans may not be at the tippy top of every single category. Which is a humbling thought, isn't it? And the video doesn't let us off the hook there. It takes this idea of non-human intelligence even further. It brings up this thing called the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness, which basically says that humans aren't the only ones on Earth experiencing consciousness. This is a big deal, by the way. This declaration was signed by a bunch of leading neuroscientists, and they're saying that a lot of animals, mammals, birds, maybe even some invertebrates, they might have the brain structures needed for consciousness. Think about that for a second. If they're right, that means we're sharing the planet with other beings. who have feelings,
Mm-hmm.
who experience self-awareness, and who might even have a sense of self, just like we do. That raises a ton of ethical questions, like if we know for sure that animals are conscious, feeling beings, how does that change how we treat them? What responsibilities do we have to these creatures?
Especially if they're experiencing the world in a way that's not so different from how we experience it. It's
Yeah.
heavy stuff, right? And, it kind of leads us to another one of those big, big questions that the video tackles head on. Death. What happens when we die? Is it just like lights out, the end of our conscious experience? Or is there something more, something beyond? I mean, it's a question that humans have been asking since, well, forever probably. And the video doesn't shy away from it, which I appreciate. But what I find so interesting is that even though we don't have any concrete answers, we're still driven to find meaning, right? Like we want our lives to have purpose even in the face of our own mortality. It's like we have this built-in need to believe that there's more to our existence, something beyond the physical world. And this desire to understand the unknown, to find meaning, it kind of connects to our fascination with ancient mysteries, don't you think? Like Stonehenge, the pyramids of Giza, these amazing structures that have been around for centuries, silent witnesses to civilizations that are long gone. We can study them, we can measure them, but they still hold secrets, right? Like, how were they built with such incredible precision? What was the inspiration behind these things? What did they mean to the people who actually built them? They're like these tangible reminders that we don't know everything, that there are still gaps in our knowledge, even about our own past. Okay, but here's the cool part. Even though we're faced with all this uncertainty, the human mind is capable of some pretty incredible things. The video talks about the placebo effect, for example. When people experience real improvements in their health, just because they believe they're receiving an effective treatment, even if they're not actually getting the real medicine or whatever. It's such a powerful demonstration of how our minds and bodies are connected. Like our beliefs can actually have a physical impact on us. It makes you wonder if we can think ourselves into feeling better. What else are our minds capable of? And speaking of the power of thought, the video also talks about self-affirmation, which is basically the idea that reminding ourselves of our strengths and our values can actually change our brain chemistry, and that can lead to better self-esteem. It's like we have this constant internal dialogue going on in our heads, and by choosing to make that dialogue more positive, more encouraging, we can actually change our mindset and improve how we feel about ourselves. It's a simple idea, but it's really powerful. We all have access to that kind of power, which is pretty cool. But as amazing as our minds are, the video doesn't let us forget one very important thing. We're part of something so much bigger than ourselves. It takes us on this journey to the edge of the observable universe, and it reminds us that our galaxy, with its hundreds of billions of stars, is just one of billions upon billions of galaxies out there. Billions. It's mind-blowing, right? And kind of humbling when you really think about it. It makes all our little earthly problems seem, well, a bit insignificant. And then, of course, there's the big question that always comes up when we talk about space. Are we alone? Just thinking about the possibility of other intelligent life out there. It's exhilarating, but it's also kind of terrifying at the same time. I mean, it opens up all these possibilities, but it also forces us to confront our place in, like, the cosmic pecking order. Like, if we're not alone, what does that mean for humanity? Would it be a good thing or a bad thing to make contact with an alien civilization? These are questions that science fiction has been exploring forever, but they're becoming more and more relevant as we learn more about the universe. But you know what? We don't have to travel to distant galaxies to encounter mysteries. They're all around us, right here, right now, in the everyday things we take for granted. Like, why do we yawn? And why is it contagious? You see someone yawn, you yawn. Why is that? Scientists have some theories, but we still don't totally understand what's happening in our brains. Or how about laughter? Why do we laugh? It's supposed to be a response to humor, right? Joy. But what's actually going on in our brains when we find something funny? And why do different cultures find different things funny? It's amazing that something so fundamental to being human, to the human experience, is still a bit of a mystery. And then there's the human body itself. Why are some people right-handed and some people are left-handed? Why aren't we all ambidextrous? Wouldn't that be way more efficient? These are all questions scientists are still trying to figure out. And it just shows that even the things we think we know about ourselves can still surprise us. And here's the kicker. The video uses these everyday mysteries to make a much bigger point, which is that a lot of the things we think of as facts, as absolute truths, are actually constantly changing. Remember when everyone thought the Earth was the center of the universe? Sounds crazy now, I know. But that was the prevailing scientific belief for centuries. It wasn't until Copernicus and Galileo came along and really challenged that view that we started to understand our actual place in the solar system. And just like that, an undeniable truth was completely overturned. And makes you wonder, what other truths that we cling to today might be proven wrong in the future? It's a good reminder that our understanding of the world is always evolving. There's always more to learn, more to discover, more to question. And that's where I'm so glad we have our expert here today. I'm really excited to dive into some of these mind-blowing concepts with them and get their unique perspective on everything we've talked about so far. It really is amazing, isn't it? The more we learn, the more we realize we don't know. But that's what makes these deep dives so fun. So are you ready to unpack even more of these mysteries with us?
You bet. It's a bit like we're standing at the edge of, well, the edge of everything we thought we knew, right?
Yeah.
And this video does a great job of pushing us to really look beyond what's familiar.
Totally. And one of the things that really got me thinking was how the video tackles the definition of life. We can list out the usual things, like cells, metabolism, reproduction. But what does it actually mean to be alive? Like, what's that spark? What's the essence of it?
It's one of those questions that has been around forever, and for good reason, I think. The video does something interesting, though. It highlights how much we rely on these very specific characteristics to define life. But what if we're missing something?
Oh, I like where you're going with this.
Like take consciousness, for instance. We were just talking about how it might be way more common in the animal world than we realized. So does that mean consciousness is a fundamental part of life itself? Or is it something else entirely?
Whoa, yeah. It's like, is it its own thing?
Yeah.
Existing on a whole other level? And then it gets even weirder when the video brings up the whole simulation idea, like in The Matrix. How do we really know that we're not all just living in some highly advanced computer program?
That's a question that goes way back, actually. Even before The Matrix, philosophers were wrestling with the nature of reality. The video mentions René Descartes. He was a philosopher back in the 17th century, and he's famous for saying, "I think, therefore I am."
Ah, yes. Classic Descartes.
He was obsessed with the idea of doubt. He believed that if you want to find real knowledge, you have to question absolutely everything, even your own senses.
So if our senses can be tricked, then how can we ever be sure of anything?
Exactly. But that's where Descartes came up with his big idea. He said that there's one thing we can't doubt, and that's the very fact that we are doubting in the first place.
Okay, I think I see where he's going with this.
Because if we're able to doubt, then we must be capable of thought, right? And if we're capable of thought, then there has to be something, some kind of mind or self that's doing the thinking.
So even if everything around us is an illusion, even if we're all just brains in jars, which is always a fun thought experiment, we can still be sure that we exist, that our minds exist. It's kind of comforting in a weird way.
Right. But it also gets to the core of what we call subjective reality, the idea that our experiences, our beliefs, how we interpret things, all of that shapes how we see the world.
But then, is there such a thing as objective reality? Like a reality that's out there, totally separate from our minds? Does that even exist?
Now that is a question, and the video doesn't shy away from it, which is great. It even touches on quantum mechanics, which suggests that observing something might actually influence what we observe.
Wait, really? It's not just theoretical?
Nope. It's been shown in experiments. At the quantum level, the simple act of measuring something can actually change its properties.
So it's like the universe is responding to us.
In a way, yeah. And it challenges everything we thought we knew about what's real.
Wow, that's heavy. So there might not be one single fixed reality. It's more flexible than that.
It might be, yeah. And that's something that has fascinated philosophers for ages. From Plato's idea of a realm of forms, where these perfect concepts exist, separate from our physical world, all the way to modern interpretations of things like quantum mechanics and consciousness.
It makes you think, doesn't it? If our perception can actually shape reality in some way, and if consciousness is maybe more interconnected than we ever imagined, what does that mean for humanity as a whole?
Now you're asking the really big questions, and it brings us right back to the idea of extraterrestrial life. If we're not alone in the universe, if there's other intelligent life out there, how does that change our understanding of who we are?
It's funny, right? Because the video makes me think about the Fermi paradox. If the universe is so vast and so old, and there are billions upon billions of stars and planets out there, statistically speaking, it seems kind of impossible that we're the only intelligent life, right? And yet, we haven't found any hard proof yet.
It's a head scratcher for sure. And one possible explanation for this, which the video brings up, is the great filter.
Ah, yes. The great filter. Always a fun one.
It's the idea that there's some kind of barrier, a hurdle, that prevents most civilizations from, I don't know, reaching a certain level of technology, or maybe from even surviving long enough to make contact with other life forms.
So it's like a test that most civilizations fail,
Something like that, yeah.
and the ones that don't.
Well, let's just say they probably don't stick around for very long.
That's kind of ominous.
The filter could be anything, really. A catastrophic asteroid, some kind of global pandemic, maybe a nuclear apocalypse, or something we haven't even thought of yet.
Okay, so if this great filter is real, where do we fit in? Have we already passed the test? Or is it still coming for us?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Whatever the answer is, it's going to have a huge impact on the future of humanity. It's a good reminder that even with all our advancements and achievements, we're still a pretty fragile species.
It's true, and the video ends on a thought that really drives that point home.
Yeah.
It talks about the gaps in our knowledge of human history itself, like the Library of Alexandria burning down. That was a devastating loss of knowledge. Countless scrolls, so much ancient wisdom, just gone.
What a tragedy.
And it makes you wonder, if so much of our history is just lost, how can we really understand who we are, where we fit into it all?
It's a question worth sitting with, that's for sure. And I think that might be the most important takeaway from the video. That we need to stay curious, to keep asking these big questions, and never stop being amazed by how much we don't know.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the mystery of it all, isn't it? Well, that was amazing. A huge thank you to our expert for guiding us through all these incredible ideas. And to everyone listening, thank you for coming along on this journey with us. It's a good reminder that the biggest discoveries often lead to even more questions. And that's a good thing. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.